Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à Collabattle. Vous me reconnaissez, je suis Isabelle ou Izzy et je suis accompagnée de Phil, Pallen.
Wait a second. Okay, we're talking multilingual design here, but I don't know that anyone knows what you just said, unless, of course, they speak French. Well done though, Izzy. Did we prank the audience chat? Did you love our little gimmick for the start of our show? Izzy, you did great, by the way. Way to spook
Thank
everyone.
you. Oh, I'm seeing some bonjour in the chat already. So bonjour everyone.
Hello, hello, everyone. So we're gonna have some fun today. I'm so excited. We're using one of Izzy's real life projects today to talk about multilingual design. We're gonna talk about some of the features that are embedded in Express, but we're also just, I think, Izzy, we're gonna talk about this from a design standpoint, and I think we're gonna have
Mhm.
a jam-packed hour. And I think it's gonna be really useful for people that are hanging out with us in the chat. We'll say hello to you in a second. Actually, I'm gonna go and share my screen since we're talking multi-languages. One of the brand new languages in Express is Croatian. How timely. You guys, I'm sitting in an island, well, in a house on an island in Croatia. That's me floating in the water yesterday morning. It's kind of like a little half vacation, half little reset, but then also a few streams here and there, getting over a little summer cold. But I'm just so happy to be here with you guys today. And Izzy, you know I'm always happy to hang out with you. You've been also having a good summer, yes?
So far, so good, Phil. Thank you so much for asking. I mean, I can't share like the same beauty as you just did, but I mean, this is my parents' cottage, and I was there last weekend, and you can see my fiance just hanging out on his phone on the patio, and like I have more of like this is at the lake. Let me just. Oh, is it a sneak peek
It's
of
so
something? Like
beautiful.
let me share this because I was paddle boarding for the whole afternoon on Sunday. I have a massive sunburn. I did 6K of paddle boarding, which was amazing.
Wow.
But nothing
That's a
compares
lot.
to you, Phil. It was a lot. I mean, my shoulders are not happy with me right now, but hey, we got this.
All worth it. I love that you are loving your summer. Friends in the chat, I'm coming over to you in a second. I want to say hello to you. We're so happy you're here. Let us know what you are up to this week. We just came out of July 4th. I think just in general, there's like summer vibes. So let us know what you're up to and let us know where you are if you're going anywhere fun this summer. And we will get cracking on our multilingual design. And as always, Izzy's going to kick us off and I'll jump in as needed.
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about the project that we will be working with today, and it's coming from a real project, actually. I have, if we can put the camera on me for a little bit, I have here a zine that I created for Adobe Live during a June challenge for Illustrator, where we looked at some half-tone text, some radial, I have some like nice radial designs here. And I loved it so much that I wanted to bring this to print and have it for myself. And the whole idea is designer confessions. So it's confessions from my desk about freelancing. And some of the stories are very quirky, some are very honest. And today we are going to work with a quirky story, which is I have TV coworkers. So I work by myself most of the time. And sometimes it feels a little lonely. So I will put on a show in the background and we're going to work with that today. Also, there's only 20 copies of this zine. And I would like to have a raffle for one of you to win a
I love that
copy of this
idea.
zine. I mean, it's summer. Why not do a giveaway, right? Like, let's feel the good vibes. So maybe we can figure out a way on how to do this, Phil. And then you
I'll
just
keep an
have
eye on
to
the
make
chat.
sure.
Uh,
Perfect. So,
yep.
oh, sorry.
We'll
I
keep an
just,
eye on the chat. It's gonna go to um, whoever is most actively hanging out with us today as we multilingual
ooh,
design. How about that? And I'm
yes.
gonna I'm gonna see where we're at towards the end. Also, I have to give a shout out to Robert who's typing to us, I think in Swedish. Well done. Wade, impressive French. Chad, I see you in more languages than just English, and I'm impressed.
Lovely. I can't, I love this because languages is so interesting and I love the history of it and communicating today. Like, I mean, it's it's fascinating to me. So here I have the text. I have made this canvas, which I had to resize. And if ever you want to do this for yourself as well, I had to put this measurement into millimeters because the platform that I have used to print this zine is called newspaper, which I will touch on a little bit later. But the width is 578 by 380. And you can always go to the newspaper website right here. There's different size, as you can see here, and it's like all the information is there. So because we are working in Express and not the typical design software, we have to have margins. So here I'm just going to do show margins. And because this specific printing method does not need a bleed, we do not need to show bleed. But this is also an option that I recently learned through you, Phil, that we can do, which is amazing.
It's a newer feature in Express, but it's one that's really exciting for those of you creative pros that are used to opening Illustrator, InDesign for your print projects. We always say we're not replacing our workflows with Express, but Express is like this amazing little sibling that can
Mhm.
sometimes just get the job done faster. And now that we know we can turn on margins and bleed, there's a chance you can hop in here, create stuff quickly, and in some instances, I'm seeing with our Adobe Live fam, you're able to hand off some of these projects to people on your team or even some of your
Yes.
clients to be able to manage some of this stuff themselves rather than we all know as
I-
designers, it's like, hey, Izzy, can you do this thing? By tomorrow, it's the deadline is yesterday, and I know you've got a million other things you need to do, but can you do this for me? And I feel like Express is ideally alleviating some of that pressure, right?
Absolutely. And what I like about this is that you can easily template stuff. So let's say that you know someone who wanted a publication like this. And in this instance, it's very much of a personal project. But I mean, this type of printing is so fun. It could be for festivals to announce a lineup. It could be for announcing like a lineup of what's the word I'm looking for? I'm thinking in French, Phil. Oh my
You're allowed
goodness,
to
like
think in French today, Izzy. You are allowed to think in French.
oh
That is
my goodness.
celebrated here.
But it could even be like thinking for agencies, even like if you wanted to
Yeah.
print like projects and then send it to your prospect clients or something like portfolios, like it's anyone can work from this template. The marketing team can like add their own spin to it, so there's a lot that can be benefited from this. However, because we're working on one big sheet here, I did add a line at the very like middle to like just simulate that spread, and I did lock it, so this here would be the middle. So we have spread A and spread B right here. So here, I mean, you know me, Phil, so I want to work with some funky fonts to design. So I'm designing the English first because I want to translate it after in French. So
Okay.
gonna go into
Might I
my
also
brands.
might I also add that Keys is chiming in with some French as well. I haven't seen Spanish yet in the chat. I'm curious to see if we have any Spanish speakers. What kind of languages do we have represented in our chat today? Let us know. While Izzy is working on her, I'd say, Izzy, you have two signatures. Your amazing choice of big, bold fonts. And two, there we go. We knew it was coming. And two, your exceptional use of black and white. Here we go with the compliments. This is supposed to be a battle, but sometimes I can't help myself. These really are your
Ah,
two signatures. Wouldn't you agree?
thank you.
Black and white,
Yes.
big, bold
It's
fonts.
it's crazy because when it comes to client work, I go extremely colorful, but when it comes to my own work, I tend to go black and white and with like crazy fonts like this. And sometimes I'll add some funky colors to other personal projects like the zines for the Ottawa Design Club. And it's always, I like to give myself some restrictions to see what I can create within those restrictions. Sometimes I give myself no restrictions, which is also a massive challenge because then everything is available. Um, but having like some guidelines like helps a lot.
Amen.
So
Good point.
here I have some very cool assets. So I wanted this zine to have like a vintage vibe to it. So this is an image that I actually generated in Firefly. I used a reference image in Firefly of a vintage TV, but I really wanted to have a New York view in it. So it was very specific. So I was able to generate that right here. And let me just like center it. Then I'm going to bring the coworkers on top.
While you are lining that up and adjusting the ordering of the layers, friends, you know that in Express, we have all of our layers over on the right-hand side, like we do in all of our favorite Adobe apps. Might I mention that if you haven't tried text to image in Express lately, let's say in the last few months, it is so worth your while to try this out in Express, along with some of the recent updates, some of the ones we're exploring today. I'll probably talk a little bit about locking elements, locking and allowing replace. Talk about that in a moment. Izzy, you brought up templates, so we'll touch on that. We already talked about margins. We're going to talk about single click apply brand. But friends, text to image powered by Adobe Firefly and Express has gotten so good, might I add. And in this case, Izzy was like, let's get this done ahead of time. It's kind of like a cooking show. We prepare some of these assets ahead of
Yes.
time. Today, we really want to talk about the language stuff because I think this applies to a lot of the work that you're doing, some of the decisions you're thinking, right? But in the case of Firefly, hop into Express, press media, choose photo, and then try text to image. It's the latest version. And know always when you're creating with Adobe Firefly, it is safe for commercial use. This is major for your projects and for your clients. Just knowing that the assets, the projects that you create are safe for blog thumbnails, safe for Instagram carousels, LinkedIn posts, projects. It's really, really awesome to know. I know as a creative, like I just love being able to create and use my imagination, but also know, Izzy, that I can do something with this
Mm-hmm.
amazing creation. And this TV is a really awesome example. Good one.
Thank you. And it's crazy like what you can do too and how good it has gotten to. The other reason why I personally did it ahead of time, and maybe I can zoom on it so we can kind of see, because I did wanted to have a very specific noise effect on it that I wanted to control in Photoshop. I know we have filters and all this in Express as well, but sometimes I get very, very, very picky, and this is the designer that's coming out. But it's okay because I was still able to then add it to my library and then using it to build social media assets or even other products as a derivative of the zine itself once it was done.
Beautiful. Keys. We've got Keys typing in Spanish. We've got Jess typing in German. There's just one thing that well, there's more than one thing. There's a lot of things I love about Adobe Live, but it's our friends in the chat that are like getting fully immersed in our theme today. It's bringing me live.
I love that. So here I'm just doing some italics because there's a lot of titles, right? Where I'm saying that my go-to, and please in the chat, feel free to share your go-tos if you're like me, if you have shows playing in the background as your coworkers. I have The Office, Friends, Girls, Younger, that's for TV series. And then for movies, and I kid you not, feel like I could recite the movies from beginning to end. Mean Girls, Pitch Perfect, and Devil Wears Prada.
Good choices. They're very good
Oh,
choices.
I love like Mean Girls. I recently went to a supper or dinner, I guess you could say, at a friend, and we actually played trivia, like Mean Girl trivia. And I had almost a perfect score of 64 on 65. So I do know
Well done.
my
You do.
Mean
Yeah.
Girls.
I'm not going to mess with you on that topic. You know your
No,
stuff.
you don't want to. I'll win. This is it would be a true collab battle, I guess. And here. And this is like the nitty-gritty, right? Like whenever it comes to like some text editing, typesetting, which I'm very happy that you can like do in Express because some people might be picky about this as they should.
Wade says, pitch perfect sing off. Let's go. Oh my gosh, I think you got the wrong audience for that. You never ever want to get me doing karaoke. Not my strength.
I'm actually very good at karaoke. And I know all of the Pitch Perfect songs. So
So
I
you
won't do it
actually
here.
like this challenge. You actually like this challenge. I'm terrified by it. Izzy's like, I'm up for that.
I'm up for that. Yeah. Yeah. So this is looking good.
How do
Um,
you decide text sizes, layout choices?
hmm,
I asked this specifically for black and white. We're talking about a zine today, so you
yeah.
have to use negative space strategically. I mean, even decisions like text going vertical, horizontal. How do you
Mhm.
arrive at some of these decisions? Walk us through it.
Oh my goodness. So there's a lot of trial and error. Um, if you want to be a bit more technical about sizing, they say to using like a multiple. If you're using the same font and using a multiple of two or three or four, so your header should be like very big, but then you divide that by or like minus. I actually don't even know like how to explain it properly because it's very mathematical and it's definitely not my strength. Um,
But even
but like,
intuitively, maybe just focus on the
yes,
intuition because you have strong intuition on this.
I mean, for me, it's space, and it's always like, can we clearly read what we are like seeing? Like coworkers here, like it is a funky font. TV, like even though it's like it's being hidden, I think we can still understand like the word. Also, I wanted to make sure that it was not wider or than the TV itself. I mean, again, if I like, there's not that much space like between this and the TV, like the TV itself. So it's just like centering. And honestly, it's just practice and then understanding what good composition is. And a good composition refers to the principles of composition, which is balance, rhythm, contrast, and all this. So get familiar with those, and then your design will absolutely improve in anything, like design in the wide sense of design, not just text or like layouts, but illustration, photo, composition, everything. I hope
Such
this
good
was a good.
advice. It's a little bit of balance between like theory type stuff as it relates to design, but also just following intuition, having some good reference examples for sure.
And also breaking the rules too. Sometimes it depends. Like this has like feels very organized, and I want it to be organized, but I have some other designs that I want to feel like a complete mess. And it so that's another thing. It's getting like what are the intention and what are you trying to communicate with the non-verbal of the design, and then try to have some ideas to encapsulate what you're trying to say in between the
Yes.
lines if you want.
Yes.
So here, I think like this is pretty much done. And I think it's time to translate. So,
Let's
Phil,
do
I
it.
actually have not tried this, but can you select a lot at the same time to translate? Let's see. I think you can. Let's do it in French. So you click on here. So I have selected everything. That translate button. And it brings you here. You have a side menu. So I just typed French. And you can also select multiple languages to translate it all at the same time. I'm going to do Spanish. And do you have a recommendation,
Add it
Phil?
in.
As like, what would you like as another?
I would like you to add Croatian, even though I'm not going to know if it's right or wrong. I just want to celebrate the fact that that's where I am right now.
Love it.
And Croatian is one of the new languages about, I think it was roughly 20, maybe it's 14. It's around that many new languages that were added. So basically, you're going to hop into Express as you're trying to translate or localize your designs. Know that there's a good chance what you're going to find in Express is at least going to get you started, right?
Hmm. So once we have selected our languages, then you can do duplicate and translate. So let's
Love
click
it.
on this and see it's doing it automatically for you, which again blows my mind like how quick that was. And as you can see, even at the top here, it's showing the spreads with different languages. So we have French, Spanish, and Croatian. So obviously being French here, I'm gonna work on this layout. And we always need to adjust designs whenever it's in multi languages. So I'd like to touch on this a little bit, Phil, if you allow me,
I would love
because
for you to.
thank you. So, being in Canada, where specifically in the capital in Ottawa, like we are a government city and there are two official languages. I mean, throughout Canada, that's a reality. Here, it's both French and English, and everything has to be translated, and there's rules to follow. And to me, it is not uncommon to do designs twice in different languages. And I even have some of my friends who will design in Anishinaabe, which is an indigenous language as well when it comes to institutions, which is extremely interesting. And the one thing that I have to say is to understand text expansion, because depending on if you're going from English to French, well, there is like a 30% more words in French to say the same thing in English. And depending on the language that you're translating from, it can go up to 50%. So while there was a lot of negative space in my design prior to, even knowing I was going to translate in French, like I did allow the design to like be able to do that. Do you have anything to add, Phil? Because
I also grew up probably a little bit less exposure than you living in a multilingual household or bilingual household, I should say. Well, maybe it's multilingual, I'm not sure. But I also grew up in Canada. I don't know if our chat knows that. We're both Canadian. I don't
we're
happen to
both
live in Canada
Canadian.
anymore, but you had mentioned not only are there regulations, but there are laws in place
Mm-hmm.
around not only the requirement of translating into both languages, but also things like, from a design standpoint, the size of text
Yep.
on signage, um, the proximity of it, legibility, even just like equality, making sure that both languages are
Yep.
represented equally and fairly. We bring that up and we thought that this would make for an interesting discussion and some recommendations on this topic as we work together on this. But it's something that likely will impact you in your design
Mm-hmm.
journey. And I would add that, Izzy, like for me, also slides, like preparing
Yes.
presentation slides. I've
Yes.
given keynotes in 5 continents, including Japan. I actually had to meet with my translators before delivering the presentation, not just so that they can translate it correctly, but also so that we're aware of like cultural nuances. I wouldn't want to say something on stage that they're going to translate directly. Let me give an example. The elephant in the room, that in the
Mm-hmm.
context of Japanese, they said that doesn't make any sense. So avoid sayings like that, and that I think so much of it is it's communication. Um, it's a challenge, obviously working with a typeface with different, you know, linguistic elements and accents at times. But I think so much of this is just communication. And I think it's interesting to hear from you, probably because you're designing in more than one language quite often.
Mm-hmm. I have like that, as you said, it's a regulation. And also I'm seeing Keys here asking, is Quebecois is the Canadian version of French, right? Actually, there's French all over Canada and all of the provinces. And depending on which province that you live in, you are a French Ontarian or French, like, or Quebecois or whatsoever. I live in Ontario, so I'm considered a Franco-Ontarian. Um, and where was I going with this? I knew there was a point to this, but yes, depending on where you live. So in Quebec, because it is considered a um, French province, and French technically comes first on everything, whereas the rest of Canada, English is the first language that will show up on packaging or on like official documents and so on. But in Quebec, it's the reverse. So it's rules that you need to know. And in Ottawa, specifically, living right next to the border and having clients, it's just a bridge away that technically live in uh, Quebec, I need to know those rules in order to adjust whenever I get like those types of requests.
Absolutely. Keys, I won't take us too off topic here. I did try langouche in Budapest when we chatted last. It was delicious, very filling. Um, Jess, there's a great question from you that I want to read out for Izzy. Haven't used Translate in Adobe Express. How accurate is the translator tool? What's the source and the translator behind it? Izzy, I'm going to let you speak to this, but when you click, Jess and everyone, when you click the translate button, which Izzy did a moment ago up in the top nav, you'll see that this is powered by Google Translate. Now, we know Google Translate can sometimes be a fantastic solution. Sometimes it doesn't get it quite right, specifically cultural nuances and little nuances that might require a human. I don't know how you feel about this, Izzy, but I kind of like reminders once in a while that humans
Yes,
are indeed necessary. Human translation or human awareness and nuance, I think a lot of times will make something better than a machine will.
absolutely. Because depending on the language, we all have also like different expressions, right? Like I'm thinking of idiom that you can't necessarily translate from a language to another, and it has a very specific connotation. So I just say don't only go to a whatever language you're translating to speaker. I'd say seek a professional so then they can guide you in the proper direction of making sure that the intention of what is being translated is there. Again, I worked at the government for 5 years before going on my freelance journey. So I was lucky to work with translators and I have learned so much from them. So if you have like translators within your network, I'd say befriend them because they can teach you a lot about design even. So here, I mean, this is Croatian. There is absolutely no way for me to know if this is accurate or not. But if I go back to the French here, I mean, it's pretty good. Like I'm reading quickly in between the lines, and it's a pretty good translation. I would need to sit with it and again, like send it to a translator, just again, making sure because I'm not a professional translator, but from a French speaking perspective, it looks pretty good. So,
Well, and it's a case
yes.
also where you might use, for example, the translate feature in Adobe Express to create proof of concept or create a point of discussion that you can have with your client. I remember using
Mm-hmm.
this feature on a project that I worked on where there were mines in 4 or 5, I think 6 different countries.
Oh, wow.
And I said to the client, hey, I probably didn't get the translation perfect, but this is a starting point within the design, right? So much of this is kind of like, how can we at least start the idea, take it further, and then have a human take it across that finish line? And all too
Mm-hmm.
often, I think, I don't know, that's where I see Adobe Express really shine is we can create that proof of concept. We can use these tools that are embedded in the platform. And then we say to a client or we say to a colleague, hey, can you put your finishing touches on this? And that's exactly what you just did.
And the other thing too, right? Like if we come back to the text expansion, or let's say you are going from French to English, where there's actually a text reduction in space, you can also see, like, even if you don't have the final text, you can see the space that it's taking, and it gives you an idea. So then when you do get the proper translation, then your design is like already figured out. Because sometimes you will run into a lot of puzzles when it comes to this. And here we're actually going with like all the spreads are individual and it's in its own language. So sometimes you have to have both languages on the same design. And trust me, those are the hardest because you have a limited space to
Yeah.
fit everything. Yeah.
Well, I know for a fact that at the beginning of this stream, you would have never imagined that you'd be designing in Croatian. I'm quite impressed with you. I'm quite
Uh,
impressed with you.
I'm quite impressed with you because like you.
Also, I mean, I genuinely get excited by how some of these features can make your life easier. So those are the ones I talk about. I talk a lot about Express and Firefly. Genuinely, I just love when this platform can save you time. And I think for so many of our Adobe Live fam, our creative pros, and even clients that are just, even, I don't know, just opening Photoshop and opening Illustrator. Maybe they were less comfortable in these platforms, but now some of
Mhm,
the features powered by AI, it's um, really creating like an exciting, welcoming environment.
mhm.
Creating patterns and vector images and stuff from a text prompt. I'm really excited by all of these, including Express and just how you're able to plug this into your workflow in a way that makes your life easier. This looks awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I want to take us to a whole different type of challenge, if that's okay. Because I'm really happy with this. And I mean, I could like continue doing more spreads with more stories, but I think we should do some stories,
Great.
Instagram stories, and translate some famous quotes from those shows and have a lot of fun with it and just be very creative with that type of content. How do you feel about that, Phil?
I love that idea. Maybe we'll switch to my screen for a few minutes here.
Sure,
Izzy, I'll probably still use your help to paste in some of those quotes, but I would
we'll do.
love to spend a few minutes talking about how do we think about promoting something like this on social media, and now even thinking about how to do it in a different language. So, what I might start with in Express, so I'm back, I'm sharing my screen here. I'm looking at, let's start with the English. So we see TV coworkers. I'm going to hop up here. And what I might do next is I might duplicate. Okay. Then I'm going to resize and I'm going to think about what are all of the places that I want to post this. I think this would make an amazing YouTube thumbnail. I think this would make an amazing
Mm,
Instagram reel or Instagram story. In fact, I'm going to click both. It's really unconventional for us to think, oh, how can we go from print layout to YouTube thumbnail? But I really want to show you how easy this is in Express. So I'm going to go ahead and click duplicate and resize. Let's start with an Instagram story. And Izzy, maybe I can meet you on page 3. I think also
yes.
you've got the font installed and I forgot to install the font. So I probably can't edit it. Let me
Mm,
just unlock this element and talk about what I'm doing. But I don't think I need to yet. But if I need to change any of the text, I might call on you. Um, Friends, something really cool just happened. So I'm going to pop in here closer. You can see this. Izzy had this line which we drew. If you want to know where to add a basic element, we find that in elements. Then we click over to shapes. And right down there, we'll find a whole section for lines and arrows. You probably don't want too many of the drawn ones, but you can go for like a simple arrow, or sorry, a simple line, Izzy, which was what you did. And then on that
mhm.
line shape, we have the ability to adjust the border thickness as well. We could make it dotted, solid, etc. You've got a few options there. You had this locked, and I want to just show people that that's possible in Express. So when you click the element, this little lock icon right up here under line, we can select that, and that's going to just make it a little more difficult, one extra step to actually delete or move that element. That can be really useful when you're handing off assets and templates to clients. So if we're going to go ahead and post this on an Instagram story, which is what we're talking about, I want to think about what can we share that doesn't give the whole story away.
Mm,
In this case, Izzy, you're wanting to probably send people over, right, to your actual full editorial. In this
mhm.
case, it's a physical zine. Let's imagine that it's also available on the web, which I'm sure it is, like at a URL where someone
It
can read
will
it.
be. It will be
Yeah,
soon.
that
I'm
makes
working on it.
it will be soon. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. So what I like to do, friends, we know that when we duplicate and resize, it's probably not going to be an absolute perfect duplication. The whole point is take an existing canvas, duplicate it. Then, as you saw me there, I unlocked some elements and deleted some of those finer details that I needed for the actual zine layout, but I don't need for an Instagram story. So, what if we did something like, what if we showed half? This feels very you.
Ooh,
What if we were like to show half of the TV or even just a little peek of it? I actually like that side of it better. I bet you do too.
yes.
And you're thinking maybe like a quote here, aren't you?
So pre stream, we have gathered some cool quotes. So let me share. Actually, let me paste it in here, Phil, and
Perfect.
maybe you can like tell me if you know from which movie is this?
Well, I'm happy to know that if I don't get the answer to this right, you're not going to be happy with me since you score typically a near
Yes.
100% perfect. So I'm happy to say that I know that this is from Mean Girls. If I didn't know that, we'd be in big trouble.
We would be in big trouble. Then we would be collaborating for real.
We would definitely be battling for real. I should have let our chat actually chime in on that. Who knew that this was a Mean Girls quote? Yeah, I think most of
There
you
you
knew. I
go.
mean, it's kind of an
Hmm.
iconic quote. That's great.
So,
So, in terms of, yeah, Izzy, I'm going to let you put the text in place. Let's
okay.
talk about how we might promote something like this on social media. You also want to think, for example, if it's going on Instagram, you want to leave space top and bottom. Your profile photo shows up top, caption, if it's a reel, or some of those social media elements will appear at the very bottom. So, you typically want to work within the confined space that we're showing right now. Izzy, feel free to delete any of these blocks that you're not actually using.
Yeah.
And let me also clarify too, anytime that you can add an interactive element to your story, chances are it will increase its exposure, impressions, performance. So even if it's a simple slider, I'll sometimes think like, what can I give people on screen to do while they're consuming my content? What can I give them to do, even if it's sliding an emoji that will fly up? It means that they stayed on your post a few extra seconds, and the algorithm of whatever social media platform you're on is going, huh, they found this useful, or they found this interesting, or they stayed here longer to consume or read or interact. All of those kind of micro actions make a big difference. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it. But in this context, we're thinking, how can we just plant a seed of what it is that we want them to go and do? The other thing I would add is that link clicks are notoriously low on Instagram.
Mm.
So, whatever you can do that keeps people on Instagram typically works better. So, maybe it's a quiz inspired by your article. You can do a true and false,
Ooh.
right? You
So,
could, I mean, there's a handful of things you could do a poll, you could do add a question sticker where people could contribute a response, and then you could share some of those responses. I don't know if this is spawning any ideas for you, Izzy.
yes. So if it's a quiz, then that means we need to have some room to have that sticker, right? That quiz sticker.
Yep,
So let's
exactly.
move stuff around. And then actually, maybe we bring this at the bottom because we want to have the quote as the main thing
And
or the
so,
main
kind of
focus.
exactly in your mind, I love what you're doing here. In your mind, you're kind of planning for where those stickers can go, which you'll obviously add directly in Instagram. A little trick, sometimes I'll hop over to elements and I'll add a shape temporarily to represent where that might go. So for example, and I might add it in like an obvious color. You know what I mean? We could, that's roughly the
Mm,
size of like the question sticker. So you would just generally want to make sure, okay, I'm leaving room for that there. Once you know there's room left for it, you can delete it. I make use of the shapes in Express all the time, just as placeholders. I also, a little trick, sometimes I use the shapes to measure things. So like I'll use a square or a rectangle between two elements, and then I duplicate that and actually use it just as a spacer. Little trick in Express that can be really useful. This is looking good.
thank you. Let's add some pink here just because I think it could be fun. And I'll try to have like a mean girl pink so we can also.
And you would know what that is, wouldn't you? You would know what Mean Girl
Yes.
Pink is.
Also,
Jess says,
the
yes, a story
me.
quiz is so fun. It's a good point, Jess. Like, think about the difference of the excitement level between reading a story that sends me off Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I don't really want to leave Instagram. And
Mhm.
it's wild to me. Like when you look at your story clicks, very few people will leave Instagram. Whereas just like you just alluded to, it's like if you were to keep people on, say, hey, I want to quiz you. The next four questions are going to ask you, you know, Izzy, this is inspired by you, but like, let's test your Mean Girls knowledge. Whoever, gets every question right wins, even if it's not a prize. Like, do you see the difference now and how engaging that is? And I guarantee you'll notice a huge shift in your views overall.
Let me write this designer confessions, then issue. And I know I'm bringing it at the bottom. I'm gonna rejig it because this is getting very close to the bottom, right? Or what you were mentioning, Phil,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah. You just want
spacing.
to be conscious of it. It's not the end of the world, especially when you're also doing something that's designed forward. You can sometimes kind of break the rules. Um,
How's this? I think
another
this,
that looks really good. Another option you have if you want the text that you're adding on screen to be kind of read, if you will, by Instagram, then you may consider adding that text directly in Instagram as one of Instagram's fonts. I think they've recently expanded some of the styling options, or maybe I'm just getting them because I'm abroad at the moment, but I'm seeing a whole bunch of new fonts. Have you guys in the chat? Have you seen some of those new styles? I'm really digging some of them. But that's another option is like if you want to add text directly in Instagram, again, I count for that design now as you're working on obviously more detailed design that you can do in Express versus Instagram.
let me add an animation to this, like as a slide, maybe. And I think you would have to play it, Phil, if we wanted to see the animation.
Sure. I love it. Looks really good.
It's very
Let me go
fast.
back
Let
here.
me slow this down a little bit.
So friends, by adding an animation to any element on your static image post, all of a sudden it becomes a video. We can see that down at the bottom. You would just click edit timeline and it's going to give you the functionality to basically adjust this like you would a video, add audio, add narration. Izzy, you and I have fun with that sometimes in Express when we're promoting
Yes.
Collabattle. We do our little
Yes.
narrated. Oh, it's on, baby. That's my famous quote right there.
It's on,
Mhm.
honey.
Oh, it's on Honey. You're right. I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you happy with this, Phil?
I think it looks amazing. And you left some white space in the middle
Mm-hmm.
because that's going to give us a whole wide range of options for adding a sticker. Love it. Done. And someone like you, Izzy, could create this template for your client and then hand it off to the client. You can lock some of those elements. So select the element. Let's actually showcase if we can lock and allow replace
Mm.
So if you, are we sharing your screen or mine? I think we're on yours, Izzy. If you go ahead and lock that text, actually, I just locked it. Hold
I,
on.
I,
I'm going to
I
unlock
think
it
we
so
are
you
on,
can lock it.
I think we're on
Are we in?
yours.
Oh, we're on my screen. Great. So we can select any text element that we want. When it's a text element and we hit the lock, it's going to give us this additional option to select under lock settings. Text can be replaced. What does this mean, friends? It means a few things. We cannot adjust the font and we cannot adjust the size. So it's, as a designer, it's really important that you think about the box that you draw for where that text can be contained. We can now change the text, but we can't adjust the style of it. We know, of course, that on Wednesdays, is it Wednesday or Wednesdays, plural? You would know the quote,
Um,
is it?
I think it's Wednesdays. You're right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's okay.
That's a
So,
very French thing to forget S's or add S's where it's
yes,
not supposed
yeah,
to.
that's okay. We're celebrating
Yes.
language and localization today. But friends, I just wanted to show you this because this is a really handy thing. I think, you know, you know how to use your templates in your designs, but when you're handing these off to someone who's maybe not quite as comfortable,
Mhm.
they welcome these parameters and these limitations, if you will, to just kind of keep things intact. Everyone who has a brand wants to keep it intact, and these are some of the tools that are enabling us to do that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Can we try something together, Phil?
The answer is always yes to that, Izzy. The answer is
If
always yes.
if you have locked this and then can you like let me see if I can translate it. Just to see what's gonna happen.
That's a good little experiment. Sometimes we learn by doing, don't we?
Exactly. So I'm gonna translate it to French.
I know that more recently, the additional controls, for example, translating specific layers on a design, that's relatively new and quite exciting, giving you more freedom and flexibility. Look how many designs we have. We've been busy today.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
Actually,
cool
it
though.
did. It's so if we go to page 10,
Yep. Go
which
there right now.
okay.
Looking
And so
good.
we just have the pink here that's missing, but it translated the locked text box too, which this is really cool. Wow. Very impressive.
Jess has a good question about Instagram stickers. Let's talk about it. If a quiz can increase the, I think it says interest, my little notification box is covering it. How often should we do them? Interaction, sorry, that was the word. How often should you do one to keep it fun without like becoming annoying? Jess, that's going to differ for every single person, every single creator. Here's how I would think about creating graphics for social media. Think about it in the context of like how you might banter with someone in real life and try to recreate that. So, you know, we've all been in a conversation that's gone on for too long. It's uncomfortable, right? You're like, okay, when is this going to end? You don't want to be that person on Instagram. But also, you know, give yourself some grace and have some confidence in your own ability to like have some fun with a certain theme or an idea. Again, keeping them on Instagram. The platform loves that. And generally, people that are on Instagram want to stay there. So maybe it's like, if it's 5 questions, maybe you say that up front. Let's test your Mean Girls knowledge. Whoever gets the next 5 questions right, or when, you know, gets the most of them right wins, even if there's no prize. Like, just kind of communicate that like you would in real life. That would be my best advice.
So I think we are on my screen now,
Yep.
and I added another quote. And I mean, can you guess from which movie? This is another movie, but not Mean Girls. I changed it up.
Everybody wants to be us. I know that quote. What is that quote? Everybody wants to be us. Chat, help me out.
I
Oh, we're going to
will
use a little visual
give you
reference, a little hint.
yes a little hint.
It's from Devil Wears Prada.
There you
Miranda
go.
Priestley.
Okay.
Everyone wants to
Yes.
be us.
Everyone, yeah, at the end, which is the famous quote. Let me change that to grayscale. There you go.
Talk us through what you're doing here. So you're actually applying some effects to your
Effects.
image, which came from a
Correct.
library.
Correct. Because this, like from my library, actually, let's go to my library here. If I go to brands, I have like a designer confession, like library here, and I have a lot of assets. So I have added everything that I had converted. Can I like maybe zoom? Here you go.
Yeah, that's perfect.
To black and white. But in the essence of, doing the promotion for this zine, I was like, oh, maybe we would need like more assets. Like here, I was able to find a world's best boss for Michael Scott in The Office, which I guess I like sold the punch for the next one. But Pitch Perfect having that vintage mic, but there is no effects applied to it. So like thankfully we can easily do this in Adobe Express. So let me go back to my project right here. Here you go.
Looking good.
So I just want to again like maybe quickly like translate that just again to see, and it's actually very fun as a francophone to see the translation from movie quotes, because again it's like the whole thing that we talked about with like the connotation or like the meaning. So if you were to watch the movie in another language, it would not be necessarily that, but to me it's very funny and very fun to do. It's a fun experiment.
That's
And
another
it's
thing.
just
Like, you notice movie names in different
oops.
languages aren't necessarily a direct translation of the name that you know it as,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes it's a wholly, like a totally different angle or perspective or name. Again, that has that kind of like cultural significance or reference. I love that.
Me too. So where is it? It's right here. Tout le monde va être nous, which is like perfectly translated. So we are wrapping up on
Yep.
this collab battle. Phil, I mean, who should have a zine? Who was the most active in the chat today?
I have been very impressed with the activity in the chat. We can always count on keys. We can always count on a handful of you. I would say Jess asked some really good questions. So if I had to pick a winner, I think it's going to be Jess.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Jess, and thank you so much for your engagement throughout this whole stream. Please send me a message either on my Instagram or my Behance, which Wade just shared in the chat, and we will get that sorted out. Thank you.
So fun. So fun. It's been fun to explore this. This was like kind
Mhm,
of a new topic for us, right? Izzy? This idea
mhm.
of like designing in different languages. Hopefully, if you joined us for part of today or you saw some of what we discussed, Izzy did a really good job of walking us through some of that thought process on like, here's how to design, not just for the language you know and you're comfortable with, but here's how to think about it in a different language you might be less familiar with. Remember that
Mhm.
Adobe Express is the perfect platform to translate, to localize. Well, it's at least perfect to get you started. In so many cases, we might need that human touch, that human care to just get it across the finish line with those, cultural nuances, I might call them. But I don't know
Mhm.
about you, Izzy. I love a reminder that we still need humans. And we do need humans. We need
Yes.
you. We need your creativity. And as always, it's just such a joy to hang out with our Adobe Live fam in the
Oh
chat.
my
And if you're
goodness.
watching the
Yes.
replay, we value you just as much. So thanks for hanging out with us as always. Izzy, should we tell them quickly what our plan is for the future?
Yes, please do so. I was like anxiously waiting for you to mention it.
This is our final collab battle, but don't worry, you're not going to get rid of us that easy. We have a brand new show coming out starting next week. Stay tuned for our socials. We'll let you know our schedule coming up. It's called Ask a Designer, similar to the vibe that you're used to from us, but we're going to bring in some of our real life client projects and ask a designer. So stay tuned,
Yes,
friends.
it's gonna be so much fun.
It's going to be so fun. I can't wait. We'll see you next week, Izzy. We'll see you
Mhm.
guys in the chat. We'll see you soon. Thanks for hanging out with us on Adobe
Thank
Live.
you.
Stay tuned. There's some good stuff today.
Bye. Take care.